In these past 3 years, I've pretty much played every single ARPG/Diablo-like game I have ever played in my whole life. I've laid my hands on the likes of the mainstream ARPGs like Diablo, specifically Diablo 2, to less popular ones like Grim Dawn. All of this amounted to only having really played like 10 ARPGs, which is a ton for ARPGs. I didn't even finish one of them. One thing I have recently started to look out for with each of these games is the power level of the character building tactics that are available to the player. Every single one of these games require an understanding of what gear, skills, and passives will most effectively enchant the player against whatever monstrous horror the player is going up against. It's usually a monstrous horror anyway. When are we gonna get the cozy or cute ARPG with dating sim attachments? Back to the topic at hand, I'm going to go through each of these games that I've played and rank them by how much freedom the player has to build their characters in these games. I will preface that this is an extremely vibes-based tier list. Also, because I was on a crunch to get this one out, I did not script the tier list portion of this video, and will not script it. I do believe in every part of the tier list, but the ideas will be surface level. With that disclaimer out of the way, here's the tier list. So to start off the tier list portion of— wait, why are they all out of order? What the hell? I put them in the good order and then I took them out of the order. Hold on. Let me fix it. Alright, so here's my tier list. I of course have different tiers for all of the different ARPGs. I do have Path of Exile at the top and Diablo 1 at the bottom. I originally had Diablo 3 at the bottom, but then I took a second look, and because I was so out of my gourd and so wrong about Diablo 3, I decided no, that's impossible. No. Diablo 1 is the most restrictive game, I'm pretty sure. So let's talk about Path of Exile first, because I think it's better if I go from Path of Exile to all the Diablos in a row, you know. So Path of Exile is the most freeing build class making thing of all of these games. A lot of the games here, and in fact, I would say all of them pretty much all of them have a class system where you have to start at a certain point, right? Diablo 1 even has one. Diablo 2, everyone knows about Diablo 2s, like the Necromancer, the Druid, the Assassin, all of those. Diablo 3 has all of its, like the Witch Hunter, the Barbarian, things like that. Is it called the Witch? No, it's not called the Witch Hunter. It's like the Witch Doctor, my bad. Witch Doctor. And then, of course, Diablo 4 kind of returns back to Diablo 2's style of classes. Torchlight 2, if you don't know, has classes. Fate is actually the outlier here in that it doesn't have classes, but we'll talk about Fate later. Both of the Minecraft ARPGs have classes to them, actually. Grim Dawn and Last Epoch also have classes to them. So they all have classes. But the thing that sets Path of Exile apart is that a class doesn't stop you from playing, like, anything. You can play a bow witch if you want. You could play a, let's say, you wanted to play a claw-only ranger, like a melee ranger, which is actually pretty common. You can play whatever you want with the Path of Exile, really. Your class choice literally just basically throws your dart at the dartboard for your starting position, but you can grab every single talent you want as long as you have the creativity to get them. And on top of that, none of the skills are locked to a class, right? None of them are locked to a class. So as long as you can meet the requirements of a skill, you can use it. Which means it is probably, and Path of Exile 2 is probably also like this, though I can't really tell, I don't really know. It might not be, because I haven't played Path of Exile 2, that's why it's not on here. But Path of Exile is the gold standard, pretty much. Like, it is the top of the top. Now here's why Diablo 1 is actually at the bottom. It's because it's just super bare bones, right? I mean, there's not really classes in Diablo 1. There's mostly just like starting stats that you pick, right? There's no limitation on which skills you can have, but there's also not that many skills, right? Diablo 1, as Jerma had put it, was a good experiment. And actually, I kind of like Diablo 1 setting the story for all of Diablo, actually. I actually did enjoy the ending. I was entranced by the ending the first time I ever played it. Seeing how the player character becomes the bad guy for Diablo 2. Very interesting, very interesting. And now that we've set those standards aside here, the other columns that we have are mostly just like, you know, B or maybe A. B, C, and then Diablo was D. Fittingly, Diablo was D. Serious. Wow, we actually kind of got like P tier. This is like Pizza Tower. But yeah, fittingly, like I just kind of picked these. I liked these as my thing. So let's go look over Diablo 2. Diablo 2, I would say, is actually probably here. Now, among the Diablos, I actually do think Diablo 2 is the most character build free. Like, there's a lot of different ways you can character build. But also, maybe I'm a little biased, so I think I'll bump it down just out of bias. Because there's actually maybe a little bit of... There might be a bit of a... How do I say this? There might be a bit of a argument that Diablo 2 actually is a little bare bones in comparison to Diablo 3 and 4. Now that I've remembered more things. I actually did a first take of this where I said, again, Diablo 3 is at the bottom. But now I've looked more into it, and actually Diablo 3 has more options than I thought. So I am biased, but I think that Diablo 2 should be here, but now that I'm thinking about it more, the thing is with Diablo 2 is the only things you really get to select are your class, skills, and then your equipment. The thing is with the equipment is that there's many different options for equipment in that game, right? You got uniques, you got set items, you got rune words. I don't think rune words have made an appearance in any traditional ARPGs other than Diablo 2. Now, note I did say traditional ARPGs. We will get into other ones on this list very soon. But I think that the addition of rune words is just something so cool and interesting, and very interesting to have that the player can discover and tinker around with. That's why I really want to put it here, but again, the lack of other things you can really do. It is neat that you get 3 different pathways per class, though. 3 different pathways is quite exciting. Grim Dawn kinda has something like that, but not really. Torchlight 2 actually directly has something like that. I don't think it's enough maybe to push it up to here, but it is. I really do like this one. Just know that. I wish I could put it higher, but I can't put it higher with my further thoughts in my brain. I can't put it higher than this, at like around B tier. Now for Diablo 3. I think Diablo 3 is probably behind Diablo 2 here. Now that I've looked more, it might even be creeping into this one. Because of the fact that, 1, there's not really too much skill variation in this game, which is as far as I got. If we were looking only at the skills and the equipment, it would be here. But I've looked up more about builds in Diablo 3, and it turns out that there's a lot more. It's not like a massive thing, but this might be at the bottom of this. Like, it might be all the way over here, you know? Because things like apparently this thing called paragon and kanai's cube, they can create some variation, I guess, for your build. But whenever I played it, it really didn't feel that varied. Like, the perk system doesn't seem that interesting. I heard actually that they implemented another perk system that looks like the Path of Exile talent tree. But I'm not well versed in any of that. So I'm just gonna say it belongs in the bottom. Next up, we have Diablo 4, which I would actually put like about after Diablo 3. Ahead of Diablo 3 rather. This is a ranking style thing where the things closer to the front are in fact better than the ones behind them. Diablo 4, unlike Diablo 3, I am more well versed in. I have gotten a level 100 character. That was a long time ago in 2023, but still, you know, I have gotten to the point where you put the things on the board. I would not say that those were super duper interesting. I think they were just a means to kind of feel like the Path of Exile thing, but I feel as though they were not as interesting. Also, I feel as though even though Diablo 4 has like kind of the class system as Diablo 3, or not Diablo 3, sorry, Diablo 2. Diablo 4's class system is more skill restrictive. I think actually there are fewer pathways that you can take with your Diablo 4 character than a Diablo 2 character. But I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't know if they've added new things for your build. The other thing is that it felt a lot like whenever I played it a long time ago, that the only thing you really did with your equipment was either 1, you had a very broken end game piece of unique equipment that basically set up anybody's build. That made me grossed out actually at the game. Or all of your equipment just had a bunch of rocks in them that were resistance rocks. That's it. I remember that I was trying to fight end game bosses, and the whole time it just felt like, oh, I have the right rocks in my equipment, I beat the endgame boss. I maxed out my chaos res, I win. That was it. That was how it felt. So yeah, I don't know. Diablo 4 and Diablo 3 may actually be in contention with each other. Now these next two games are kind of like the childhood classics that people might have played, starting with Torchlight 2, which I think is probably above Diablo 4, because it is like almost exactly a Diablo 2 style game. I believe this game was actually made by devs of Diablo 3, but they took more ideas from Diablo 2, like the fact that Diablo 2 has like 3 branching paths per class. Torchlight 2 also is like that. They have different branching paths. Obviously, there's no rune words. There's no weird board thing. I can't remember what the board thing is called in Diablo 4, but they don't have that. They did have, I believe, let me go double check. Gotta go pull out. I had to actually pull out my last Epoch for this list too to remind myself what that was like. Let me go pull this out. I think there were passives. I'm pretty sure there are passives on the trees for Torchlight 2. But again, I gotta go double check. Yes, I remember actually perfectly. Okay. So yeah, Torchlight 2 actually has passive, like straight up passives. They are separate from the skills. So that is something that is kind of similar to the Diablo 4 thing. They don't actually, I don't think the skill tree has passives in Diablo 4, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure the way it works is actually that you have to wait until you get that board thing to get passives, right? So I would say that that puts it above. I actually forgot the most important thing about Torchlight 2 is that it actually has something from Fate, which is that there's a pet system. You could have a second guy who works for you, which may actually be an added element of character building. Consistently having a pet is actually kind of interesting. So I would say that, yeah, it's above Diablo 4 actually, which is probably crazy to some people. Probably kind of crazy, but just, I think that Torchlight 2 may be carrying the flame a little more. Now let's talk about Fate, the other childhood dream. This is probably at the bottom of this. This is very much not a very good one. I think we would maybe even put it here. I don't know. I think it might be there or there. Because, I mean, it's just as bare bones as Diablo 1, probably. Fate is just like, there's like nothing in this game. You know? You got the pet system, but the pet system is legitimately like nothing. There's actually pet equipment in Torchlight 2. There's no pet equipment in Fate. It's just... Actually, I think you can put like a ring on there. I think eventually later... Oh yeah, by the way, this is a bundle up of all of the Fates because they're mostly similar. I think later they may have given them a ring and a necklace. But I don't think that's true. I feel like I'm lying to myself. I feel like I'm gaslighting myself. So I think as to fill this one, just this thing, we're gonna leave it in this category, but let me explain how this one works because I imagine a lot of people have probably played Diablo 3 and Diablo 4. I did do a little bit of explanation on Torchlight 2, and I imagine a lot of people play Diablo 2. But Fate, probably people haven't played. You know, if you're an adult, you haven't probably played Fate. So the way Fate's build system, if you can even call it that, works, is you can get any spell on any character, but it requires the requisite skill points in a certain passive, like it's like a passive skill system. The passive skill point system does give you bonus damage for whatever it is you're picking, but it also acts as the way for you to actually use certain skills. I think that there are skills that require... I think it's actually the equipment that requires the points. But also, your stats matter as well, like your basic stats. This game has the 4 basic stats, like... Well, actually, it has 4 of them, weirdly enough. There's strength, dexterity, vitality, and then the magic one, which I think is just called magic. Pretty similarly to Diablo 1, if you think about it. And those all determine whether or not you can use skills and equipment alongside the other passive tree. It's just literally a long list of all the different types of ways you can damage. It's like hammers, it's like staffs. If we're talking about magic stuff, it's like the 3 different flavors of magic, which are attack, defense, and charm, which is weird that it's called charm. That's like the summoner class stuff. There's one for bows. It's not very, how do I put this? It's not very thorough. There's not a lot of stuff out there that you can do in Fate. You're limited really just by the fact that Fate doesn't have much to do. So that's why it's definitely at least here, and at worst here. But we'll put it here because, you know, we gotta put someone there. I don't think anyone else actually belongs in here. I obviously think that Diablo 3 is above Fate by a long shot. Even if you look into the future Fate games, the only thing they really do with those games is just add more enemies and more pets that you can get by using the fish system. Which the fish system is this thing where you can transform your pet into any monster, basically. It's not really that deep. It does let you cheese the game a little bit though. But with that, I think I can move on to the Minecraft ones. They are very, very strong. I will admit that the two Minecraft ARPGs are so strong. I think they belong here and here. But we'll start with the first one. This is the first one, which is Craft to Exile Dissonance. This is the first Minecraft ARPG. I played a lot of this one. I played a ton of this one. Craft to Exile 2 didn't have one thing that it did have. I would say that this is actually above the first one, because this game does something special. It is kind of bare bones. There's only a passive, like a talent tree from Path of Exile, basically. Except it's slightly different. It's like I think it might be like an old version of the passive tree or something. It's just a slightly different passive tree. And then there are class skill trees that you can pick. Now, the thing is, with these class skill trees, at level 1, you can only have one. I think it's at about level 50, you can have a second one. And at level 100, you unlock the third skill tree. Which is actually kind of unheard of for these games that do it. Grim Dawn gets 2. They get 2 very early, but you get 2. Craft to Exile, they said you can have 3. Now, what else is there special about Craft to Exile? Well, they have the rune word system from Diablo 2 in the game. They have the set system from Diablo 2 in the game. It's not as unfree as you would think it would be, even though it's so bare bones. It's kind of awesome, honestly. But at the same time, I think I can't recommend it to people because of the fact that it's in 1.15 and it feels kinda antiquated controls-wise. So yeah, that's how I feel about Craft to Exile Dissonance, and that kind of explains why and how the build system is more free than these games. It basically just trumps over some of these games by simply having a talent tree system that also has no limitations. You just pick the place where you start. You can go wherever you want. That talent tree, by the way, is pretty broken in this one. This one, it's unbalanced. I don't think there's any balance going on here. Oh yeah, also, another thing I should say, and I didn't even bring this up with the other ones, there's a currency system in this game. And also Path of Exile. Everyone knows about the currency system in Path of Exile. Path to Exile and the second one, they both have currency systems. So I don't know, man. I think that puts them above the payroll, right? Above the thing. Which brings me to Craft to Exile 2, which I think belongs there. Now, the one thing that puts Craft to Exile 2 above Craft to Exile Dissonance is that there's an ascendancy system in Craft to Exile 2, and somehow it is more free than Path of Exile's ascendancy system. You can mix anything with anything. You can pick any of the ascendancies for some reason. You may think that that's crazy and that's too much freedom, but maybe that's just how it is, you know? I think the main thing that makes it not as free as Path of Exile, though, is that you can start in any class tree of skills you want, but they are still in a class tree of skills. So if you wanted to mix, and you can only have 2 skill trees, you can only have 2 class skill trees. So if you wanted to mix somehow like 5 different skills from 5 different class trees, you couldn't do it. And I'm pretty sure it would also be pretty good. The other thing is that your class tree ties to your passives. There are passives in this one on top of the talent tree. This one has a talent tree. There are passives on top of the talent tree that are also tied to the skill trees. What I'm basically saying is that Craft to Exile 2's character building system is an amalgamation of Path of Exile, because it has the talent tree and the ascendancy tree. The ascendancies are literally named after the Path of Exile ones, by the way. You got like Gladiator, you got Trickster in there. Trickster is really broken, by the way. You have, I think Elementalist is in there. There's a lot of them in there. Not all of them are obviously based off of it. I think some of them are like primordialist. I don't think that's in Path of Exile, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I haven't played all of the ascendancies yet. So there's where it takes from that. It takes from Diablo 2 by simply having the class-based system. The classes are not at all the same as Diablo 2. They are not even close. Craft to Exile 1, I think, had maybe something closer to the Barbarian with Cyclone. There is a Cyclone move in Craft to Exile 2, but it's not this. The Barbarian, like the Warrior tree, that's what it's called, is not the same as the Barbarian. So it does take from that. It steals from Torchlight 2 because it has a passive skill tree that is embedded within the rest of the skill tree. What else is there? Oh yeah, it takes even more from Diablo 2 because I forgot. It also has the rune words. Both of these have rune words. I already mentioned that for this one. But obviously they brought it back in Craft Exile 2. I think there's more rune words in Craft Exile 2 than Diablo 2 actually. So, you get so many options. You get just so many options for your Craft Exile 2 character. The other thing is, this wasn't in Craft Exile Dissonance, but they had skill gems. They have skill gems in Craft Exile 2 that are from Path of Exile. Some of them are literally from there. I think there's void manipulation in this one. Things like that. The thing's mechanically different though. There are definitely mechanical differences. It feels like such a good amalgamation of all the different ARPG elements in one game that I can't not put it in Path of Exile tier. That's why Craft Exile 2 is there. Now Grim Dawn, I would say is probably like either here or at the top of here. Because, I think I'm going to put it here. I do think that Grim Dawn has a pretty good system for making a build. I've kind of discounted the crafting system quite a bit. The crafting system in Diablo 3 and Grim Dawn are almost the same actually. However, there's more options. I think Diablo 3 is only like, you craft an item and you hope to randomly get the right thing. Grim Dawn is like, you craft an item to hopefully get the right thing, which you don't really have to do in this game. But also you can apply any passive you want to something, any affix rather. You can apply like a affix. It's like an affix. That makes it probably pretty good for building your character, right? I've said it over and over again. Grim Dawn and Diablo 2 have like the skill trees. You can have 2 of them very, very early in Grim Dawn. You start starting at level 10, you get a second skill tree, which means you get a cool little name attached to your character, and it just acts as a way for you to build your character in many different ways. Adding a second skill tree to any character is basically just adding a second dimension to any of your characters, right? It's always a very massively freeing thing. The problem obviously with Grim Dawn is that you have to really heavily level into whatever you want. You have to heavily spec into whatever you want. So if you want to if you want to play all the good skills in this, they're not just going to immediately be available as soon as you reach a certain level like Path of Exile. The other thing about Grim Dawn, obviously, is the large devotion tree, which is basically like Path of Exile's talent tree, just a little more difficult to get into, as in it's harder to access certain nodes. But they're also more impactful. Or at least I believe they're to be more impactful. Path of Exile will have a node that says something like, gain 10%, well, that's too small. I think it would probably be like, gain 10% elemental damage, gain 10% chance to shock, ignite, or freeze, right? That is literally, word for word, one of the small talents. Grim Dawn's talent will read, gain a flat 163 elemental damage and then gain 80% more elemental damage. And then on top of that, every single piece of Grim Dawn equipment is like 15 lines of different effects that it can do to you, which are I think that makes a higher variation in builds. The Grim Dawn character building experience with the equipment is quite interesting. And now we must fittingly end this tier list part by talking about Last Epoch. The last one. I don't know actually how to put this. I played this game once and I got to like level 40 and I didn't finish it. This was the one that I didn't finish. I think I didn't finish it. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I didn't finish Last Epoch. Now, I think it's probably like here, but I could be corrected again, like Diablo 3 as well. I think for Last Epoch and Diablo 3, you could tell me that I'm wrong and I would stand corrected, because the way I saw it, whenever I opened Last Epoch again, just to remind myself what the building is like, one thing I haven't really gotten a grasp on or learned about, which I've heard a lot of people enjoy about it, is the crafting system of the game. I don't remember. I don't remember, or I didn't interact with the crafting system of this game. I also remembered, whenever I saw it, the whole relic system or whatever. It was like the thing where you could socket pieces of, I don't know what they were. I think they were just called relics, into your character's inventory for bonuses. They were kind of, oh, that actually reminds me. It's kind of like the artifact in the artifacts or whatever they're called in Diablo 2, right? Where there was passive items that just stuck in your inventory. Very similar to Diablo 2. Last Epoch has that going for it, which I think makes it probably a little more interesting, but also upon second glance, I saw that there were like around, I think there's actually like 4 different pathways for each of the builds to go. So you could actually quite a substantial amount more decision making. I'm really tied between calling it more free than Diablo 2 or not, because the Diablo 2 rune word system and set system, I can't remember. I think this game might have sets, but I can't quite remember. The thing is, you only get one class tree. You can only pick one, well, okay, sorry. You can only pick one class. You don't get like a second class in Last Epoch. So it's on par with Diablo 2. But the thing is, whenever you pick that class, there's a boatload of passives that you pick under that class. And then there's another web of passives that change how your skills work. So it's kind of got the skill system, the skill gem system, just like Path of Exile, except in a talent tree form, kind of, which makes me think that maybe it is above Diablo 2, but I wouldn't put it beyond Grim Dawn, because Grim Dawn, which I forgot to mention, kinda also has a skill gem system, where there are some skills that can be edited within the passive tree to edit how they work. Now, there might be some other mechanics to Last Epoch that I just don't know about and I just don't have any knowledge of. And I can't really make a full opinion on the way builds work in this game. So, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, I think this is how I'm going to have my whole tier list. Here it is, going from Path of Exile to Diablo 1. If you want to know more about these games, you know, you can just look them up on the internet. Obviously, you can know about Path of Exile pretty easily because it's a free game. The Craft to Exile twins, you can look up by looking up Craft to Exile, but you're probably going to get Craft to Exile 2. You're probably going to have to look up Craft to Exile Dissonance if you want the first one, if you have any interest in that. Grim Dawn, obviously, is Grim Dawn. You're going to have to pay for it. Last Epoch, the same thing. Actually, you know what? All these games you're going to have to pay for, huh? But yeah, you can try them out just by looking them up and getting them and playing them, if you want to really get into it. Now, if you're someone who's like, man, the current ARPG I've been playing has been kind of boring with the way character building has worked, you can try, like, going up the ladder, you know, of these games. Going up the ladder. But yeah, that's gonna be it for the tier list portion. Let's end this video. With that, I think I have effectively put out my thoughts on the different ways the characters are built across the many ARPGs I have played as of late. I wanted to do this tier list specifically because when it comes to ARPGs, this part of the game is the most important part for the replayability of the game. Most of these games exist with a class system, Fate obviously being the exception as I said earlier, that enables a player to choose their start, but what happens after the player picks their starting path heavily differs between the games. Let me know if you've played this many ARPGs before, and whether or not I have missed some important parts of these games when it comes to building characters. I do know that I lack some knowledge for these games, especially as I said Diablo 3 and as well Last Epoch, but I want to reiterate for probably the 500th time that this list is really vibes based. Another thing I want to add as an addendum to this script that I've written here is that it's very important to say that the character building freedom does not equate to a good ARPG. That's very important to mention. Just because I said Diablo 4 is more free than Diablo 3 for your character building does not mean that Diablo 4 is better than Diablo 3, okay? See you in the next video.